Hey there, coaches. I'm Rich Prado, owner of Play In School and host of Travel Ball Talk, where I talk to travel ball coaches from the best organizations about the current and future state of travel baseball. This week's episode features brothers from Kansas. Scott and Clark Jones are the owners of Natural Baseball just outside of Kansas City. We have a great conversation that covers a lot of topics, including blending old school with new school, as well as some creative scheduling that helps get their guys more looks. I hope you enjoy this episode of Travel Ball Talk. All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. Today's call is going to be a first attempt to have two guests on the line at the same time. And it's going to be further complicated by the fact that they are brothers. So if they end up talking over each other and fighting and or giving each other noogies in the middle of the call, please forgive us. Today we head out to Olathe, Kansas, a suburb of Kansas City over on the Kansas side. We got Scott Jones and his younger brother, Clark Jones, the head honchos at Natural Baseball. Scott, Clark, welcome to Travel Ball Talk. How you guys doing?
Morning, Rich. Doing good?
Yeah, good morning.
Things going okay out there?
Yeah, sun's shining for this particular time. We got some wind blowing. It'd be a great day to play baseball, actually.
Right on. Now, let me do this because this way I'm going to be able to tell who is who. Scott, can you give us maybe a little bit of your background, kind of how you ended up in this baseball business, and then we'll go over to Clark.
Sure. Well, we grew up here in Kansas City, or in the Overland Park area. Played through high school. Went to KU for 4 years. Thought I could walk on at a D1 school. Found out that was a little more difficult than just showing up for a tryout. And ended up playing baseball at Abilene College for a year. Coached for a year after that. And then ended up in the real world doing corporate America for about 25 or so years. Clark came to me in about the end of 2006 and said, I'm going to get a building and we're going to do some baseball lessons.
Just that simple.
We're gonna put some nets up. We're gonna do lessons, and that's really where it started at. We didn't plan on doing teams. We didn't plan on it being crazy, but he got things rolling, and it kind of took off from there.
So this was 2006, 2007 time frame.
Yeah,
We actually
opened up January of 2007.
Got it.
Yep.
So let's hand the mic over to Clark. Clark, give us your quick background and walk us up right up until about that time, that 06, 07 time frame.
Yeah. So again, just chasing two older brothers around baseball my whole life, and just kind of bred with it, and became just a huge passion of mine. I always wanted to be a professional baseball player, and everything that I did. Ended up going to Allen County Community College for 2 years. Then went to Iowa State and played for 2 years. Didn't get the opportunity to move on, so of course I had to grow up and be a big boy and get a big boy job. Did that for a while and decided that I hated it a lot. And I wanted to get back into my passion and coaching baseball. So that's kind of where we came up with the natural baseball idea, and then jumped in head first and figured I'm either going to sink or swim.
Yeah, it's amazing how many guys I talk to that are sort of they're long gone from the the quote unquote real world. People jump in there, they realize that a suit and tie doesn't fit them quite right, and they got to get back in the gym. So before we go too far, the facility, the team name is Natural Baseball. I had a sneaking suspicion about that, but go ahead and tell us where the inspiration for that name came from.
Yeah, just kind of started thinking about good baseball names, and didn't want to make it a personal touch or Jones Baseball or something like that to sound like an arrogant, what. So started thinking around and went, well, let's see some baseball. Where's some inspiration from? And think about movies that I liked, and just Natural Baseball Academy just had a good ring to it.
Yes. So for you younger listeners out there, the best movie, possibly one of the top 10, top 5, top 3 all-time baseball movies is The Natural. And so you'll recognize the lightning bolt in their logo is also a nod to the movie, to Roy Hobbs, to smacking that home run, smacking the home run off the lights. What a great flick! So pretty cool to see that somebody kind of paid homage to that movie with the names. So both of you mentioned there's another brother in between you guys in age, and he's also sort of a part of this family business. He doesn't work with you guys, but he's in the family business of coaching baseball. Tell us where he is and what he's doing.
So our brother Mike lives in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. He's been the head coach of Western Nebraska Community College since they started their program 15 plus years ago, I think. He was in Dodge City prior to that and ran their program for about 3 years, I think, after graduating from Emporia State. So going through high school, he played at Avila College for 2 years, transferred to Emporia State, pitched there for 2 years under Coach Embury, and got to be a grad assistant there before moving on to Dodge City, and now ended up in Western Nebraska.
That's awesome. So he's coaching at a JUCO in Nebraska. So all three brothers are in the coaching world, and I believe one of you guys said that Dad used to work at the academy as well. So you got everybody coaching in baseball.
Yeah, actually we did. Our father coached. He coached youth teams with us and helped us with our first ever high school team, really, as our nephew played on that team. So he was a fixture in the lobby, checking people in and just doing some of the day-to-day grind stuff until just recently. Yeah.
So speaking of dads, that's a little foreshadowing. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but that's a topic for a little bit down the road. So Natural opens over a decade ago. You're talking about 12, 13 years ago. A lot of hard work between then and now. I know it's you probably a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for both of you guys in that building. But let's fast forward to 2019. Kind of give us the layout of what's going on in there, as far as how many guys are rolling through the facility, how many teams do you have, what's the makeup of Natural Baseball looking like at this point in time?
Right now we've got 26 teams, 16 at the youth level, which means some 14 and below, and 10 at the high school level. 9 at the high school level. That we're running right around 330 plus players that will roll through the facility every weekend through the wintertime, especially. In those 2 days, we'll roll 330 kids through there in 2 12-hour days.
That's could you have envisioned 300 plus players when you first opened up a decade ago?
No. No, because I would say if our initial plan was just to do high school. It was all we wanted to do. We just wanted to coach the high school age programs and then just kind of let the youth teams feed in. And then we figured out that why not build it from the ground up?
Yeah. Nice to have
By the time they
nice to have a little feeder program, right? Have the kids in house already, and they guess what? They eventually become high school players.
Right, and then they get the program by the time they get in high school versus us having to reprogram them all the time.
Yeah. They're speaking your language already.
Yep.
Right on. This is when you first, are you in the same building you were when you first opened, Clark?
No.
How many times have you moved? What'd that look like?
Our initial building, man, it was like a storage facility that was not very well taken care of. Maybe 15-foot ceilings, had the old fluorescent lights in there. It was dark. There was no heat, no AC. So it was freezing cold in the wintertime. We had
cinder block walls.
Yeah, cinder block walls. We painted them white just in an attempt to make it look like something. The wintertime, we had an old flame-throwing, missile-launching looking heater that we would have to go heat up in the morning an hour before we'd start practices, and Scott and I would just go have breakfast and let the place warm up for a bit.
Oh, man.
And then we'd go back and turn the heaters off, and by the end of the day, we're all wearing stocking caps and gloves because it's just cold.
I love it. I think you walk into some of these facilities today that are, brand new, built from the ground up, and they've got every bell and whistle, and God bless them. Those are beautiful and fabulous. But, I mean, I think every baseball guy has a memory of walking into a place like that where you can see your breath in the winter, and there's like frost showing up on the inside of the windows. It's so freaking cold.
We didn't have windows.
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah, no windows. No windows. So you had no idea what you were getting into.
That's
yeah.
I'm envisioning kind of like a jet engine sort of situation that's warming this place up. It sounds like kind of dangerous.
It was one of those old kerosene. It was an old kerosene heater like you used to see on the sidelines of football games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what it was.
And then in the summer, was it 1,000 degrees in there?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's fun. So how many places have you been since there? Have you made one move, multiple moves?
Just one.
Just one move.
Do you
now within that one move, we've changed the facility a little bit. So that first building was about 4,000 square feet and not all usable, right? So to get the full effect of the way that first building looked, Clark built a desk that was about 4.5 feet tall.
Probably. Yeah.
Somewhere in there. We had a couch and a TV just beyond that, and then you had a big box hitting net that was cut in half, so he could do lessons on one side and I could do lessons on the other.
And that's like the whole place.
Well, we had a divider net and we had 2 mounds in that divider net with a big black tarp behind the mound so the catcher could kind of see what was coming out of the wall. And we took ground balls, in some cases, off the brick wall.
Amazing.
So when we ran practices in there, you would have guys hitting, you'd have guys pitching, you'd have guys taking ground balls off this wall, and you'd have guys doing workouts with whatever we could find, bucket taps, just what we call them, Spider-Mans, and whatever we could come up with to keep them working. And there were just kids everywhere.
And to keep it from freezing to death too.
Right. So now, and then moving into this new building was like a cathedral for some of these guys who had been in this Rocky's gym, was what we called it. They would come into this cathedral and go, wow, now we've got 15,000 square feet that we had set into 3 sections like you see on the website.
Yeah, we'll describe that real quick. And first of all, if anybody wants to check it out, on Twitter, Natural Baseball, at Natural Baseball, and naturalbaseball.com is the website where you can check this out. And there's photos online. I've checked it out. It's 3 separate areas. Describe what's how you got that set up, because I think that's pretty unique.
So it was like a trampoline type place.
Yeah, indoor blow up playground.
That's indoor blow up playground.
Oh, so one of those inflatable for little kids.
Right. Yep. Right. And the building has sat empty for a couple of years, so we went in there, and I mean, the walls are yellow and purple and red and blue, and the tile in the lobby when you walk in looks like something out of a I don't even know how to describe it. Something that a clown puked on. I mean, it's just colors everywhere. And so we decided we would set up the different rooms in ways that made sense for us to work individually. So you have a pitching room that's got 4 mounds. You've got a hitting room that's got 5 tunnels, and the nets are 15 feet wide by 45 feet long. And then we have a fielding area that's got a net that's 45 wide by 100 feet. And those 3 rooms was what we started with. So we had a pitching room, a hitting room, and a fielding room. And what it turned out to be, and I'm not sure we really did this on purpose to begin with, but it turned out that it really helps us in our lessons, because the pitching guys are focused on pitching, and the pitching instructors kind of stay on their side of the wall, and they're not yelling over the top of the hitting instructors. Mm-hmm. And the hitting guys stay focused on what they're doing, and not paying attention to the pitcher that's throwing the ball past the catcher or off the wall or wherever else. Then you've got the fielding room where guys could go in and take ground balls, or I can do fielding lessons in there and not mess with Clark, who's doing hitting, and not mess with Coach Knippelmeyer, who's doing pitching, and we can all 3 do our lessons without going over the top of each other. And it really works the same way from a practice aspect. With our teams, we can run 3 teams in there on any specific hour in a specific area of the facility.
And not be all over each other, not be bumping into each other, because you have 3 separate spaces. I like that. The only thing you need to do is you got to change the name. It's not a pitching room. It's a pitching laboratory. That's the new terminology. Everybody has pitching labs. So go ahead and identify that room from now on as the pitching laboratory. Speaking of laboratories,
in there for sure.
Let's take a short break from this call to talk about my day job, video. In 2019, if you aren't leveraging film to market your guys, you are doing them a disservice. So where do I come in? Well, filming one guy on your iPhone and texting it to coaches or posting it to Twitter is easy. But filming 25, 50, 100, or 200 is really hard. And that's why you haven't done it already. That's why smart coaches partner with Play in School. We do all the work. We come to you. We can film 100 guys in the time it would take you to film just 4 or 5. If you'd like to see every team we partner with, visit playinschool.com/teams. Contact me today to discuss the details. Now, back to the call. A halfway decent segue. Speaking of laboratories, and this leads me into this this topic of technology. You know, everybody's kind of scrambling to try to incorporate, and when we spoke the other day, you mentioned that as a thing that's sort of top of mind, the new technology and a bunch of the other things that kind of go along with that. Talk about kind of how y'all have been thinking about it, what you're already doing, what you plan to do in the future. What are some of the tools and gizmos and gadgets that y'all are trying to implement?
Clark, you want to try and take that one?
I'll let you take it. You're more involved with that. I'm still the old school stuff, man. I just like to see it and say it. But that's kind of everything now is data. Everybody wants something to look at so they can tell somebody how good they're doing, and so
I think we're both way more old school on it than wanting to dive into it. Mm-hmm. The sound of the ball coming off the bat, the watching the way a kid works. I don't think you can ever really get away from the eyes of what a coach or a scout see.
Yeah.
With just numbers. But the market has moved in such a direction that says, give me the analytic data, right? Tell me how far my kid's going to hit the ball. Tell me how hard he hits it. Tell me how much better he's going to get by doing all this other stuff metric-wise, because I, as a parent, can't look at him and see the things that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where some of it's going. There's just not, right, wrong, or indifferent, there's just not as many dads playing catch with their kids as what there used to be. And I think they're more willing to give their son over to somebody else and say, teach my son how to be better, but give me the metrics that shows why I'm paying you to do that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You can see a kid improving or getting worse, to be honest with you. I mean, that happens.
Right.
I mean, most kids in there coming in routinely, they're going to get better. But having, call it almost like a report card that you can show mom and dad that's validating the work you've been doing is that's the world we live in right now. They want to see it. Yeah, I just came from breakfast with a coach I work with, and we were talking about all the measurables and all that stuff, and I think there's absolutely a place in this world for it. I think it has a ton of value, but he made a comment that sort of sums up my feelings too, and he says you can't measure the heart, and at the end of the day, it's like, some kids will outplay you, outsmart you, out hustle you, just be more of a baseball guy. And they might be a step slower. They might not hit it as hard as the next guy, but something about their heart, and you can't put that on a gun. You can't get a device to measure that. So yeah, it's both, right? Like it's not bad, it's not good. You need a little bit of both, hopefully. So okay, so we got your sort of like, I think your high level thesis on that. But so where do you go from here?
So we're going to use Diamond Kinetics. They're somewhat of a partner with the Marucci Group, and us being a Marucci Founders Club group, we decided to join with Diamond Kinetics. The high school players, as part of their player fee, are getting a year subscription, for them to be able to track their swings. They're in groups by age. So Clark and I can both go out to those groups and see what those players are doing. So anytime they come into the academy, they check out a sensor, and whether they use one of the smart bats or whether they put the sensor on their own bat, we can track their swings and kind of see their measurables and kind of get an idea on maybe where they're at. If we see a guy who's continually his hand cast is getting out of control, then time to make sure to talk to him about staying inside the ball a little bit better. If his attack angle is getting into that consistently in that negative numbers, what's he doing? Are his hands getting too high into his load? Is he getting into putting himself in a bad position when he's in that attack mode? Is he just getting into what some guys call swing mode? Is he just swinging as hard as he can with every swing without any real purpose in what he's trying to accomplish? And I think there's some ways we can do it, and we're still trying to figure out what parts of the measurements that we want to look at that make the most sense from an instructing aspect, because there's like 10 or 12 measurements. We're trying to figure out what's going to make the most sense for them.
Yeah, if you can give a kid that one thing, hey, when this number goes up, it's good. When that number goes down, it's bad. Let's see what we can do to make that number go up. If you can give him one thing to look at, versus 12 things to look at, that's going to really help.
That's exactly it.
What my mind goes to, this thing is really cool when it works, and probably easier to do with one kid when it's working. What I'm wondering about is the implementation when you have a team of 20 kids roll through, like the part where they're, that kid is either getting the bat that already has the sensor built in, or putting the other sensor on their bat, and then there's got to be some sort of login that says this is little Johnny who's taking these swings. So basically, it's like turning the device on and making sure the device knows it's Johnny is a bunch of more steps to add to a practice than there was before this thing. And getting the kids in the routine and in the habit, and getting the coaches in the routine and the habit of whatever those steps are, like that's where my mind goes. I'm like, yeah, all this stuff sounds really, really good, but how do you implement? And we'll have to check back with you after the winter time once you've had a full cycle using this thing, and find out from you, was this thing easy peasy? Do the kids just log in? Like, do they have to have their smartphone on them to turn it on and make sure the device knows it's little Johnny swinging and not little Mikey? Like, those are the things I'm wondering about. Is the actual logistics? Have you all played with it at that level yet to even know?
Not completely. What we've done, or the good thing about it is that Clark and I are at all the high school practices, mm-hmm. And Clark runs all the hitting piece for those high school practices. So we ought to be able to figure out a way to make that happen. Now I've talked about having some refurbished iPads, so we're not spending enormous amount of money with each tunnel. So when the kid comes into the tunnel, he picks up the smart bat. He goes to his profile, because when Clark or I are logged in, we've got all the groups and all the players. So if it's the 15 U's that are practicing, it's the 15U group. He finds his name, he pushes his name, and for his swings.
There you
and
go.
Then for the next guy, you switch users. For the next guy goes in, he switches users, and he hits.
Yeah, it's all about that user interface and making it easy so that whose swing you're tracking, and making sure they're actually doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we used to do, and it wouldn't be like an every week type of deal. We typically test these guys out in the wintertime. We pretty much do it at the beginning, and then at the 4-week time frame, and then at the 8-week right before we ship them off to high school, just so we can say, hey, this is your baseline. This is where you're at now.
So it's not something you need to be doing every single practice, at least in your mind right now.
No, I would break it up just kind of like we're used to anyway. We always did, we did their exit speed, the speed of the ball coming off the bat. We do it at the beginning, the middle, and the end of winter practices.
Yeah.
And challenge them, hey, get it better. Now we're going to have just a few more numbers outside of exit speed that say, hey, these need to improve.
Yeah.
So how hard are you working in practice? How hard are you working on your own to get better?
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of challenge them and make them compete with each other. Say, hey, this dude next to you just, got, 82 on his exit speed, and you just racked up an 80, and he's, 3 inches shorter than you. What's going on? If that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what's, you shouldn't be playing sports, especially think about playing college sports.
Yeah. In that same vein, is there anything else in the world of technology that y'all have looked at, or already utilizing, or think you might implement down the road? Because that's mostly hitting. Although I think Diamond Kinetics also has a pitching product.
They do. We haven't got much into the pitching product, but we've talked about Rapsodo, and using that in the pitching room.
The pitching laboratory.
Pitching laboratory.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
My pitching coach will be ecstatic to hear that. Yeah. As all of the buzzwords have come out and guys have started down, the spin rates, and velocity along that line, giving players and parents the numbers of where they're at, and how they improve, I think is viable and makes sense, as long as we don't fall in love too much with the numbers and get away from some of the intangibles, right? Does he compete on the mound? Does he have that heart and that fire that on a 2-2 count with bases juiced and up by 1, does he have that ability in himself to want to throw that breaking ball in that spot? Mm-hmm. Does he have the ability and belief in himself to throw that fastball past the guy?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that trying to give them the measurements of what they can do and give them some confidence, but at the same time not taking away from the intangibles. And that's the fine line, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Again, you can't measure heart. And last time I checked, the point of the game is to get outs if you're a pitcher, and if you're a hitter, it's to knock some runs in and score more runs than your opponent. So it's like, all that stuff is interesting and is and can be beneficial, but at the end of the day, you got to go out there and you got to get outs.
Well, everything in baseball is outs, right? Even with the hitters.
Yeah.
You want the pitchers to get outs, and you want the hitters to make productive outs.
Yeah.
You got to understand that, you're not always going to get a hit, pal.
Yeah.
But when you do an out, get something done, either move a runner up or make the pitcher throw pitches,
mm-hmm.
right, or do something. But
it's old school, man, old school.
It is, but I mean that's where we butt heads with kids nowadays, in a sense that it's instant gratification. That's why they want these numbers. They want to know that they're doing better versus just believing they're doing better. They have to see it.
Yeah.
And it. Go ahead.
No. Finish your thought.
No, I kind of lost my train of thought. So.
Well, speaking of old school, you guys do something that I think is really old school, and I absolutely love it. I'd love to hear both of y'all's kind of take on it. And we talked about how your dad is around, and guess what? My dad coached me from T-ball through Babe Ruth. But if you read the internet too much, a lot of people think that dad coaches is like some bad thing, some evil thing. Dads don't know anything, do they? But y'all have taken a different approach. Can y'all sort of talk about what you're doing as far as the dad coaches and how you're going about doing it within your organization?
So the theory behind it in my opinion, at least. And we grew up with our dad coaching us, and in turn, my dad and I both coached Clark growing up, and you even tell kids now, if they're with a good neighborhood team and they're getting good coaching on that neighborhood team, you don't need to play in an academy until you get older. Right? I mean, there's ways to get better in baseball without being associated into an academy if you're still getting good coaching. We've got several friends whose teams practice at our place but aren't directly affiliated with us, because they've got a good group of dads that can coach, and they feel comfortable with what they have and what they offer, right? So, but in trying to get away from just the full-on hard feeling of club sports and I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, the overall harshness of telling a 12-year-old you're not good enough to play, kind of rubbed us both the wrong way. I mean, I was a much smaller kid growing up, and had that been the way it was back then, who knows if I'm coaching baseball. Maybe I'm still sitting behind that desk cranking in a check every 2 weeks, whatever. But I think it gives more the neighborhood feel back to a club team where kids and parents still feel good about themselves. They feel good about what they're creating amongst themselves.
So I can tell this is like you're passionate about this, and you've kind of you've talked about a lot of the why. Tell us exactly what y'all have done at these from 14U down specifically.
Well, it's giving more kids the opportunity to play.
Yeah,
that's kind of along the lines where Scott was saying is we're not just looking for the best of the best at each age group. We want kids that want to play baseball and give them an opportunity. And really the only way to give that opportunity is let dads coach that want to continue to coach and that are good at coaching, and they're willing to kind of buy into what we want them to teach. And that's like the last piece of what Scott was talking about is we have coaches clinics for these guys.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, before we start cranking our winter practices, we run a coaches clinic, and you need to have 2 coaches from your team there. And we go through what we want, this is what we're going to work on pitching wise. This is the stuff we want you to kind of abide by. We want you to follow these guidelines. Same with hitting, same with fielding. And then we give each coach a code of conduct that they've got to follow.
And at the 14U and down, literally almost every single team is run by dads.
12 and down.
12 and down. So from
I guess we have a few 13, 14s, but majority is 12 and under.
I love that. I love that so much. I think it's on the one hand, listen, again, it's none of this stuff in travel baseball is right or wrong. It's just different. And y'all aren't doing it the right way or the wrong way. And the organization who is marketing and advertising that they've got professional coaches for every single team, I totally respect that. I love that too. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just a different thing. But the idea that y'all have gone out and specifically, built your youth program around having dads on the field, I love it. I think it's so refreshing to hear you guys embrace it. However, right there's this we want to make sure that they're using our language and saying the right things and teaching the game the right way, and so you bring them in and you coach up the coaches, right? So talk about that a little bit. I think you were kind of hitting on that, and then I jumped in a little bit. Would that be equivalent to like a certification sort of situation?
I wouldn't say it's certification, but I mean it's just pretty much just laying the groundwork for, hey, these are our expectations for you. If you want to coach a team in here, these are the guidelines that you need to follow.
Yeah.
And have we in the past had to remove a coach or two? Yes, we have.
But hey, guess what? Programs have had to remove or replace the non-dads too. That happens all the time.
Of course.
The first pushback that anybody's going to say is, and the reason to keep dads out of it is to remove the favoritism. I'm sure y'all have had at least a time or two where a coach was accused of putting their kid at shortstop when he shouldn't have been at shortstop. But is that a major problem, or are y'all able to mitigate that from the parents that are not the coaches?
I wouldn't say it's a major problem, because we see these guys throughout the winter practices, and when the teams come in and they do have a practice in the spring because of weather or whatever inside, and we get a chance to watch them, and we go watch the games. We'll see their games during the week on springtime as much as we can, or on a weekend tournament if we can get out. We don't have a lot of that. I think the idea for these coaches and the guys that we have tend to be there for the right reasons. And if we're there for the reasons to teach everybody how to play, then you don't typically have that, right? The guys at those younger ages, I'll say from 12 and below, typically have an infield position and an outfield position that they rotate through, and they may have two different infield positions, an outfield position, the pitcher, a catcher, and they do a good job of rotating those guys around in their league play. So the idea again is the guys in league they use that almost as an extra practice to run things through. So when we talk to them in our coaches clinic, it's about splitting the season up into thirds. The first third of the season, you kind of move guys around a little bit more. Let's make sure Timmy understands how to play corner outfield as well as a corner infield. And if he's a pitcher, let's get him on the mound.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if Timmy's struggling with throwing strikes and not throwing strikes very well, then maybe that second third of the season, Timmy doesn't see the mound in your tournament play or as you get into bracket play. But Timmy does a really good job at third base. He spends more time at third base and corner outfield. And then as you get to that last third of the season, the guys are more structured into what their positions are. Timmy, you're really not a corner outfielder because, well, you don't like to chase the ball if you miss it. So you're going to sit at third base and you're going to pitch. And if we need a corner outfielder, we're going to send Billy out there instead, which means you might have some time on the bench until you want to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And if the coaches hold each other accountable in that way, so there's typically no more than 3 coaches in a dugout. That keeps us from having more dads than players, and I think it takes away from the competition, I guess, of, well, why isn't my kid playing shortstop?
Mm-hmm.
How come, right? And we ask the coaches, don't coach your own son.
Mm.
So if you're the head coach and Billy's your kid, have Tom's dad coach your kid and you coach Tom.
Yeah.
And again, it takes some of that fight away from dad's son, because I think the dad kid and coach player can be a delicate and different dynamic.
Yes, it can.
On both sides.
Yeah.
And I think Clark's kind of living that full Clark's son is playing on our 9U team, and I think Clark's kind of living that a little bit as he goes through practices.
Yeah, it's super difficult to be the dad that's treating his kid exactly like he treats everybody else. Although you want to, you end up sometimes being too tough on him because he's your kid. And then sometimes there's a perception you're being too easy on them. Well, guess, a lot of times coaches' kids are pretty good at baseball. And you stick them at shortstop and you put them in the 3-hole. Guess what? All the other parents are mad at you. Right? So that's a very difficult position. And I think you guys do a smart thing by I love having coaches that are dads, but the idea of having the other guy who is sort of the point of communication for the for the kid is a pretty smart move. That's a pretty smart move. I love this. I think there's a couple layers deeper on why it's a smart thing for a facility that has 26 plus teams or whatever it is to do it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if after some academy owners hear this, they go, oh, that's a pretty darn, because every year, how many times you see, hey, we're looking for coaches. Hey, we're looking for coaches. Listen, there's only so many pro coaches out there, professional level coaches that can do it. But every team has 12 dads out there who would be willing to jump in and help out if given the opportunity.
I don't know a lot of pro coaches that are willing to go coach 11-year-olds.
Yeah. How about that?
I mean, that's kind of the kicker for me. And, we compensate that coach by giving him a player fee discount, right? So his time doesn't go unwarranted as far as compensation.
Yeah.
And that keeps a little more allegiance to the program and buy-in because, okay, I am kind of being compensated. So
yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up. You had told me that the other day when we spoke. I didn't want to mention it, but I'm glad you brought it up because, again, that's a next level deeper. If you figure you got whatever it is, 10 or 12 teams at that 12U and younger, and a couple of the 13s and 14s are run by dads, that's a pretty good chunk of expense that you're able to save on. Obviously there are some other. You're still giving the kid a uniform. You're still signing them up, right? But those expenses are way less than paying a normal salary for the season per coach. If you got 10 or 12 guys like that, where you're just basically doing a trade. Hey, your kid can be on the team if you're coaching, or a discount. That's a smart move, man. And a lot of times we get talking on this show about there can be thin margins in the travel baseball world. That's one way to lower your expenses. If you can do that times 12 teams or whatever it is, that can really help. That can really help. So let's shift gears. I do want to talk about one thing. We wanted to get into the idea of travel baseball a little bit. I mean, this travel ball talk, right? So I do want to hit that. And before we hit record, I asked Scott sort of, what's going on, what's new. And the first response was, our older guys have been out playing some games against some JUCOs. And I said, don't say another word. I want to hear about this. Now, I come from Virginia, and we don't have a lot of junior college baseball in the state. Other areas are full of JUCO baseball, and the idea of taking some of your older teams and playing against that JUCO level talent is amazing. Can you talk about that, and can you talk about sort of some of the advantages you've seen about pairing off against that older kid, that 19, 20-year-old for your high school players?
Yeah, so we over the years, right? We've been trying to track this for quite a while. Our first graduating class was a 2010 class, and Clark played travel ball, so to speak. I guess it was Babe Ruth, right, Clark?
That was the league we played in, but we traveled around.
Yeah, so I think it was kind of we first kind of learned about tournament baseball and trying to figure things out way back then. So we kind of went back to some of those roots as to, okay, how do we best get the guys in front of college coaches, and how's this really going to work? And fall ball has exploded over the last probably 8 years, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of some of that becomes expensive, and so you're trying to manipulate it both ways. What we have found is that there are area junior colleges and area NAIA schools that use it as a recruiting tool.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take, 18 players on campus to go play against your guys, you pretty much have an exclusive look at our graduating class, at those players for that weekend. And we go play 14 to 18 innings, and it's just continuous. We just kind of roll through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows our players a lot and gives the coaches not just an idea of that great graduating class, but gives them an understanding of us as an academy and what to expect from future graduating classes as far as the way they play and what's expected of them.
I love it. This has benefit on both sides. The JUCO coach gets an intimate look at your players. The players, they get to see and self-evaluate. Can I compete at that level? Can I compete? Am I hitting that pitching? Am I able to get these kids out? And I bet sometimes they can't. And they gotta understand. Oh, I'm not even hitting this pitching. How am I going to hit pitching? At the Division I level, which is my goal. So there's probably some really good self-evaluation going on. But what a neat thing. How many times throughout the fall do you think you are scheduling JUCOs these days?
We'll play 3 weekends this fall with JUCOs, and we'll play 2 other weekends against NAIA schools. So 5 out of the 8 weekends we're playing college players.
Unreal. So you touched on it earlier. The fall in the last, say, 8 years has blown up. But if you look very closely at it, and I talk about this often, the organizations who schedule their fall like they schedule their summer, I think are starting to realize, or they should be, when they finish this fall, I hope they realize that fall does not work like the summer. The coaches aren't on the road like they are in the summer. The recruiting calendars have changed. And to spend, $1,000 to $1,500 for 6 weekends in a row to go play in a big tournament, and not that many schools are there, if any, I mean, you got to finish the fall and go, what did we just do? And I love this idea where you can drive down the road, jump on the field with a junior college. What's it cost y'all? Next to nothing. You pay for umpires, and that you don't even have to rent the field because you're on their place. I love it. I love it. If anybody's listening, if you've got NAIA, if you got JUCO programs in your area, what a smart alternative to what most organizations are doing, which is this. They're trying to replicate the summer during the fall, and it just doesn't work right now. That might have worked 5 years ago. It's not working today. What an awesome thing.
But I think even we're seeing a trend, at least I saw it this summer, there's not as many coaches out beating the bushes at the tournaments, right? There's so much that they could get off of Twitter, out of even Instagram and the flat ground app guys. The video that people provide, there's so much of that available to everybody right now that, and because of the recruiting schedules, of course, that there's just not as many coaches out there right now.
Unless they're hosting at their own place.
What's that?
Unless they host a tournament at their own place, which is kind of what we try to do a lot. Is
right.
Let's get on those fields so we know somebody's got to be there because they got to open a field for us.
Yeah, that's true. I've put it in a way that where I think summers have gotten very efficient. I think that the style of the schedule has allowed coaches to see a lot of dudes without having to move around that much and without having to get in the car that many times. And so it's gotten so efficient that once you get to the fall, you're like, well, I've seen that kid 15 times. Do I really need to go see him again? And, oh, by the way, school's back in session, and they're with their own team. And so the amount of times they're leaving campus today compared to what they did 7 years ago it's a different animal. It's a very different thing, obviously, and you're combining the different calendar today, which has kept them on campus much more. So I love this concept of playing the JUCOs. I hope more people are doing it. I'm sure you're not alone. I bet you there's other people doing it. I just don't know that many people who are doing it. Obviously, you got Ontario Blue Jays. They do a different thing, right? Like, because they're an international team, they can do the same thing, but on steroids. They're allowed to play scrimmages against the Division I programs, but because you're not allowed to play D1s, but, oh, by the way, you can go play the JUCO. So you're still playing a college player, and you're playing the NAIA, so you're still playing college players, which is a very cool thing. Well, let me.
The Ontario Blue Jays just rolled town here this week. They were at Johnson County Community College on Wednesday. What is today? Today's Thursday. I think on Tuesday, and then they played an NAIA school, McPherson College, down by Wichita yesterday.
Yeah.
So
for those of you listening who aren't super familiar with the fall trip that OBJ does, you can go listen to a past episode where I spoke to Sean Travers, who, by the way, just stepped down from OBJ.
I saw that.
So, but still, they're still continuing their fall trip, and it's a fabulous thing they do. But they have the advantage of being an international team, so it's just like the D1s can play them. So they do a big long trip, and they play a lot of baseball against a lot of good programs. So on the same, we're talking a little travel ball here, and I love what you're doing during the fall. I think that's a huge opportunity for organizations. And I always ask this, and I think sometimes the question comes out a little funky, but right now you look at the state of travel baseball. What's the good, the bad, and the ugly? Obviously there's a lot of good. And when I say bad, I really mean, what are opportunities like what y'all have done? But are you signing up for events? Do you ever walk away and say, hey, they could have tweaked this, they could have tweaked that? Talk to me about the things that you're loving, and talk to me about areas you wish could get cleaned up or improved a little bit.
Well, I'll go first.
Okay.
For me, I think it's getting watered down in a sense to where some of these travel ball tournaments in the summer, it's any team willing to pay the fee, they are going to take them and bring them in.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to promote this tournament, the college recruiting, you've got to have, the talent on the field that's going to make a coach want to come back.
Yeah.
And we've had, there's several times where we've rolled onto a field and, I'll just be quite honest, played a team that had no business being on the same field.
Yeah.
And if we have coaches there, they're going to be like, why? If this is the kind of talent I'm going to see at this event, I'm not coming back. So that's kind of
here's a suggestion for tournament directors. If you're listening, if you're willing to go this way, is try to pair up equal teams. Because if you have teams that are just boat racing the other team and 10 running them in 3 innings, that doesn't allow the college coach to get a fair assessment on players. You can't tell. Listen, if you're up there flipping 72-mile-an-hour fastballs in there, you can't tell if the kid can hit an 88-mile-an-hour fastball. So you need to be pairing off teams in appropriate fashions. And, I mean, if it comes down to it, you run separate events. Or if you can't do that, run an event, but pair off the teams appropriately so the D1 guys know, hey, this is a game with 2 D1 type teams, and this is a team that's going to have 2 D3 type teams, and that's okay. But when you match up a D1 team full of loaded players against a team that's a lower level team and they boat race them, it doesn't help the evaluation process. It hurts it. Anyway, I think that's sort of where you were going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, and it's just, it's just the total talent on the field. Every team is going to have 1 or 2 decent players on it. The guys that are going to go on and play, but it's the middle to the bottom of the order type of guys that just shouldn't be on the field. Granted, yes, I love the fact they're still playing baseball and they want to play. It's just you're going to try to promote a tournament for college recruiting, you've got to be aware of what's going on the field, in my opinion. That's why we get spoiled at that Marucci event every year, because we know we're going to step on the field and we're going to face talent that's going to be quality talent, and it's going to be a battle. And that's what we want our guys to see on a regular basis. It's not about winning all the time. Compete with guys that are just as good or better than you, and let's see what you're made of.
Yeah, the Marucci World Series has become one of the premier events in the last few years. It went from, just a couple years ago, I feel like was the first time I heard about it. Now all of a sudden it's one of the premier events of the entire summer. So kudos to them. It's that's nice that you're a part of that. What do you got, Scott? You have anything to add to that as far as, good, bad, and the ugly opportunities for improvement?
One of the good things out of it, we tend to return to tournaments or to universities that we've had success having our players get recruited at.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, and in doing this for a number of years, the numbers tell us that it's like 82% of the seniors in this area stay within 4.5, 5 hours of home.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, it doesn't make a lot of sense to travel 10, 12 hours away to go play, right? For us to go play in a tournament in Arizona would be great. I'd love to go do it. I'd love to match up against those guys.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make a lot of sense for one guy.
No.
Right? And I think that's kind of that's the piece where we kind of struggle with.
Yeah.
So we try and get our guys to the local universities in the summertime that like the way our guys play, that like to see our guys, that we get some traction with out of our players. And I think it's worked in that regard.
Yeah. That is such a smart comment, and it's so true across the board. It's so true across the board. I mentioned the coach I had breakfast with this morning. He told me they're not going to Atlanta. Why? Because it is a 12-hour drive from where their players are from. Well, yeah, can one guy go down there and light up the radar gun and attract the attention of somebody out of the Southeast? Yeah, absolutely. But do you have to take 20 to 25 players and spend $50,000 as an organization on hotels, meals, travel, team fee to get into the event, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in order to accommodate that one kid? No.
Yeah, if that one kid does the work he needs to be doing as an athlete to be recruited, he's going to be known anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And guess what? You don't think there's a team out there who would love to have a guest player for the week that's really good?
Right.
There's a million.
Yeah,
you just say, hey, we think this kid could really benefit by going to this event in Arizona, in Texas, in Georgia, in Florida, but we're not going. Would you like to have our guy for the week or for the weekend? Yeah, absolutely. That's, unfortunately, I know a lot of organizations, they're very honest with me, and they say the reason we go to XYZ, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Fort Myers or Jupiter, whether it's events in Arizona, the reason they go is because the parents handcuffed them. They say, if you're not going to Georgia, we're not playing for you.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. So it's awesome events, but you guys are in Kansas. Look at beyond your own players, the average kid is going to go to school within a few hours of home. What makes your guy any different than average? Your guys are just regular guys. So I love that you've taken an actual look at where your guys have gone over like a decade of doing this at this point. And you
back onto the JUCO thing that we were talking about in the fall is the number of JUCOs that are within 2.5 or 5 hours of us. It's huge.
Yeah.
Incredible. Kansas has so many junior college programs just in the state alone that it just makes more sense because we don't have a lot of D1s around here.
Yeah.
So if a kid wants to be a D1 player and he's not getting recruited by KU, K-State, or Wichita State, we tell them go to a junior college.
Yeah. And golly, in 2019, and we stand the chance of going off the rails here for a second, but in 2019, 2020, we as a country are somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.6 trillion in student debt, and unfortunately, ball players and families with ball players, it is easy to fall into the trap of this guy likes me, he wants me to come to school there, and the school's $50,000 a year, and we only prepared to pay 15 or 20. That leaves me 30 to 40 off, and guess what? Cool. Now that jersey just costs you $100,000, and that's insanity. That's insanity, and man, guess 100% of the kids I work with want to go play college baseball. That's where so where do you play college baseball? It's in college, and there's a big fee to that. And this junior college option is such a smart option. Now again, I live in Virginia. It's not a huge option in the state of Virginia. It's starting to grow. We're starting to see a couple more pop up here and there, but man, for so many kids, it's such a smart option. Go, develop, get your first 2 years of academics done for pennies on the dollar, and then transition over. Now you're a better ball player, you're bigger, faster, stronger, and oh, by the way, it didn't cost you $50,000 to do that per year.
Yep.
Man, that's now you got me all heated. You got me all fired up now.
Now, in the same light with that, we in our academy we tend to get a lot of higher academic guys, and I'm not saying the other academies around town have dumb guys. That's not what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
right. But we have 5, 6 guys that are 30, 31, 32 ACT scores. They've got their 4.0 GPAs. They want to do pre-med work, or they want to go engineering, or they want, right. And those guys, the junior college mold probably doesn't fit for them academically.
Sure.
Right. So the idea for all of these guys, and what we preach to the guys about, is finding the academic and athletic fit.
Yeah.
If you are convinced that you want to be a D1 ball player, and Clark and I are very honest with the players, and like, that's probably not what you're going to be. Not saying you can't be, but that's you're going to kind of have to then decide, if you want to be a Division I ball player, then this is the route you need to go. If this route doesn't work for you academically, then understand, here are your other options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's where we end up with the 4.5 to 5 hours from home. Is we have there's a lot of really good Division II schools around. So you have junior college, you have really good Division II schools. Our Division I schools in the area aren't as strong.
Yeah. It's a 5-hour radius outside of Kansas City. Hits a heck of a lot of. I just pulled up a map. I'm no geography expert, but it looks like if you draw a circle, obviously you got your Kansas schools, you got your Missouri schools. You can, within 5 hours, I think you're into Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, all within 5 hours of where you live. That's a lot of potential opportunities if you look at everything from D1 down through JUCO, within an easy drive. Getting through Kansas is not an easy drive. My God, that's
boring.
That's a snore. Yeah, that's a snore fest there. Listen, I'm looking up and seeing what time it is, and I want to be respectful of your time. We may have to have you guys both come back and do this again, but I want to ask you both the same question. Maybe it just requires one person. I don't know, but and then we'll wrap up. I've been asking guys lately. How do you think the college coaches describe the players at Natural Baseball Academy? If there's one or two words or a couple phrases, that what's the stereotype on a Natural Baseball Academy guy?
Hardworking.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
Yeah.
Right, that grinder. Blue collar.
Yeah, these kids don't know it yet. They think they're busy and they think they're working hard, but you get to college and it's exponentially harder. If you're not hardworking, you're not going to get through college baseball. Just the schedule's too tough. They don't know. They think they're busy now. They don't know that. That's a good way to wrap things up. If folks are still listening, I'm going to have this episode will be at playinschool.com/Jones, and I'll make sure I put the link to naturalbaseball.com there, as well as the Twitter, which is over at Natural Baseball. Clark, Scott, I've appreciated your time. This has been fun. A lot of really interesting things. I love the JUCO schedule in the fall. I love the dads coaching, your teams. Love that stuff. I think both of those things are off the charts, and I'll be checking back in with you maybe come February, March, and see how the technology was implemented, and see if that's something that you loved, and or if there's opportunities for improvement with that stuff too. But for the time being, I'm going to let you guys go. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got it. Have a good day over at the facility.
Thanks, you guys. Be safe driving.
See ya.
Bye.
I'm having so much fun bringing these shows to you each week. If you'd like to recommend a coach for the show, please don't hesitate to shoot me a note at rich@ playinschool.com or DM me on Twitter at playinschool. Again, my name is Rich Prado. I'm the founder of Play in School. My goal is to continue to create products and services that add value to you, the travel ball coaches, your players, and their parents. Visit playinschool.com to see some of the ways we're doing that. Or better yet, let's set up a call. Until next time, thank you for listening to Travel Ball Talk.